The stars looked different when 10,000 warships gathered in one place. They blocked out the natural light, replacing it with the cold glow of engine fires and weapon arrays. Fleet Commander Jathir stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominance, watching the assembled armada through the observation port. 12 species had contributed to this fleet. 12 civilizations that had put aside their differences for one purpose: to make humanity kneel. Jathir's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he reviewed the tactical display. The humans had been given 30 days to respond to the ultimatum. They would surrender their colony worlds, rich with rare minerals and perfect farming conditions, or they would be removed by force. It was a simple equation. The Kryvax dominion had been expanding for thousands of years. They knew how to deal with young species who did not understand their place in the galactic order. The communication officer, a thin creature with silver skin, turned from her station. "Commander, the deadline expires in 1 hour. Should we begin moving into attack formation?" Jathir made a clicking sound that meant agreement. "Yes, but slowly. Let them see what they face. Sometimes fear succeeds where weapons fail." Around him, officers from different species worked at their stations. Some had scales, others had fur or skin that changed colors, but all of them shared the same expression: confidence bordering on boredom. They had studied the human fleet extensively. Humanity had been in space for only 200 years. Their ships used fusion drives that the Dominion considered outdated. Their weapons were mostly kinetic projectiles and basic energy beams. Their tactics followed predictable patterns copied from old naval warfare on their home planet. "How long do you think they will last?" asked the weapons officer, a massive creature covered in thick armor plating. Jathir considered the question. "If they fight, perhaps 3 hours. More likely they will see reason and surrender. Their military leaders are not fools. They must know they cannot win." The tactical officer highlighted something on the main display. "Commander, we are detecting increased quantum activity at the designated meeting coordinates. The humans are arriving." Every officer turned to look at the display. This was the moment they had been waiting for. They expected to see humanity's entire fleet emerge from quantum space. Perhaps 200 ships, maybe 300 if they had been hiding some reserves. It would not matter. 10,000 versus 300 was not a battle. It was an execution. The quantum signatures grew stronger. Space began to twist and fold at the meeting point, the way it always did before ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. Jathir found himself leaning forward slightly. He had fought in 17 major campaigns. He had seen the desperate last stands of dying civilizations. There was always something tragic about watching a species realize they were outmatched. "Reading one signature, Commander," the tactical officer said. Her voice carried a note of confusion. "Only one ship is emerging." Jathir's eyes narrowed. "A diplomatic vessel?" "Negative, Commander. The quantum displacement suggests something large. Very large." The space at the meeting coordinate split open and something came through. Jathir had seen thousands of ship designs in his career. He had commanded fleets against the Vrothian Empire and their biomechanical cruisers. He had faced the geometric perfection of crystalline armada vessels. But he had never seen anything quite like what emerged from quantum space now. The human ship was enormous. Nearly 5 kilometers long, it dominated the visual display, but its design made no sense. It was cylindrical, with massive rings around its central axis. Parts of the hull seemed unfinished, with exposed framework and open sections. It looked more like a space station than a warship. Strange modules jutted out at irregular intervals. Massive ports opened onto what looked like manufacturing facilities. The entire structure slowly rotated, the rings spinning at different speeds. "Is that their flagship?" the weapons officer asked. The tactical officer was running scans. "I do not understand the readings, Commander. The power signature is immense, but I cannot locate standard weapons. The ship appears to have extensive manufacturing capability, recycling systems, agricultural sections, and habitation for what might be hundreds of thousands. It is like a mobile city." Jathir felt a flicker of irritation. "Where is the rest of their fleet?" "There is no other fleet, Commander. That is the only human vessel in range." The bridge fell silent. Officers exchanged glances across the command center. Jathir's translator implant picked up whispers in multiple languages, all expressing the same confusion and growing indignation. "They send one ship?" the weapons officer finally said. "This is an insult." Jathir agreed, but something nagged at his military instincts. He had not become fleet commander by ignoring unusual situations. What is the ship's designation? The communication officer checked her readouts. It is broadcasting identification as UNSC Defiant Mercy. We are receiving a hail from their commander. Put it through. The main display switched to show a human woman. She wore a simple uniform, dark blue with minimal decorations. Her hair was pulled back and her face showed no fear, no anger, just calm professionalism. Jathir had interrogated enough prisoners to recognize that look. It was the face of someone who knew something you did not. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UNSC Defiant Mercy, the woman said. I am here to receive your response to humanity's counterproposal. Jathir felt his secondary hearts beat faster. Counterproposal? We delivered an ultimatum, not a negotiation. And where is your fleet, Captain? Surely humanity does not think a single vessel, regardless of size, can stand against the might of the Dominion. Captain Chen tilted her head slightly. Fleet Commander Jathir, I have reviewed your military history. You are known as a rational leader, so I will speak plainly. Humanity requests that you withdraw your forces and open diplomatic channels. We do not want conflict. You do not want conflict, Jathir repeated slowly. Yet you send one ship to face 10,000. Explain your logic, Captain. The human woman met his gaze through the display. You asked where our fleet is, Commander. I am the fleet. I am humanity's response. Please consider carefully what happens next. Jathir ended the communication with a sharp gesture. The human woman's face disappeared from the display, replaced by the tactical view of the lone human vessel. The bridge of the Eternal Dominance buzzed with confused conversation. Officers argued in multiple languages about what they had just witnessed. Silence, Jathir commanded. The noise stopped immediately. He turned to his tactical officer. Give me everything we know about that ship. The tactical officer brought up detailed scans on the secondary displays. The vessel appears to be what humans call a generation arc. These are designed for long-term deep space survival. The Defiant Mercy has power cores that could run for centuries. It carries massive resource processing facilities, full-scale manufacturing bays, agricultural sections with actual soil and water, and living quarters for an estimated 300,000 individuals. The weapons officer laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the bridge. They sent a colony ship to a battle? Have the humans lost their minds? Jathir did not laugh. He studied the readings more carefully. What about weapons? That is the strange part, Commander. We detect no conventional weapons arrays. No missile tubes, no beam cannons, no kinetic accelerators. There are some point defense systems for asteroid deflection, but nothing that could threaten a military vessel. Shields? Minimal. Enough to protect against radiation and micrometeors. Nothing that would stop military-grade weapons. Jathir looked at the image of the Defiant Mercy again. The massive ship continued its slow rotation, seemingly unaware or unconcerned about the 10,000 warships surrounding it. Those spinning rings bothered him. They served some purpose beyond decoration, but his tactical officer had not identified it. Commander, what are your orders? The weapons officer asked. Should we destroy it? Jathir considered. Protocol said he should give one more warning, then eliminate the threat, but something felt wrong. Captain Chen had not seemed afraid. She had not seemed foolish either. She had spoken like someone holding better cards than were visible. No, Jathir said slowly. Not yet. I want to understand what game they are playing. Send Strike Group 7, 50 ships. Have them approach the human vessel and disable it. Do not destroy it. I want to capture it intact and question its crew. Orders went out across the fleet. 50 warships broke formation and accelerated toward the Defiant Mercy. Jathir watched them go, sleek vessels bristling with weapons, each one capable of destroying a city from orbit. 50 should be more than enough to handle one unarmed colony ship. The strike group commander reported in. Approaching target. The human vessel is not taking evasive action. It is just sitting there, Commander. Perhaps they are smarter than we thought, the weapons officer suggested. They realize resistance is futile. Jathir said nothing. He watched the tactical display as the 50 ships formed a sphere around the Defiant Mercy. The human vessel made no moves. It did not power up weapons because it had none. It did not charge shields because they were already at maximum, which was barely anything. It just kept rotating slowly, those rings spinning at their steady pace. Strike Group 7, you are authorized to fire, Jathir ordered. Disable their engines and communication systems. The 50 ships opened fire. Hundreds of weapons lit up the darkness of space. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the defiant Mercy from all directions. It was enough firepower to cripple a battleship. Then something impossible happened. Sections of the defiant Mercy's hull retracted. They slid back like opening doors, revealing bays that had been hidden inside the ship's frame. Jathir leaned forward, trying to understand what he was seeing. The bays were not empty. They were full of machinery moving at incredible speed. "What is that?" someone whispered. The tactical officer's hands moved frantically across her controls. "Commander, the human vessel is launching. I cannot classify them. Thousands of small craft. No, not craft, drones. Manufacturing is still active. It is building more even as we watch." The drones poured out of the defiant Mercy like insects from a disturbed nest. They were small, maybe 3 meters long, and they moved with unnatural coordination. They formed clouds that intercepted the incoming missiles, sacrificing themselves to protect the larger ship. But that was not the most disturbing part. "Commander, the rings are accelerating," the tactical officer reported. Her voice had lost its earlier confidence. "Rotational speed increasing by 300%, 400%. Energy readings are spiking across the entire spectrum." The spinning rings around the defiant Mercy became blurs of motion. Space around them began to distort. Jathir recognized the effect, though he had only seen it in theoretical studies. The humans were creating gravitational distortions, artificial gravity wells that bent the path of incoming weapons. Energy beams that should have struck the hull curved away harmlessly. Missiles that should have found their target spiraled into each other or shot off into empty space. The few weapons that made it through the defensive screen hit the ship's hull and did minimal damage. The armor was surprisingly thick. "Strike Group 7, intensify fire," Jathir ordered. "All ships full weapons." The 50 warships increased their rate of fire. The space around the defiant Mercy became a light show of explosions and energy discharges. Drones died by the hundreds. Sections of the human ship's outer hull melted under the sustained bombardment. But then Jathir noticed something that made his blood run cold. The drones were changing. The first wave had been simple, designed only to intercept missiles. But new drones emerging from the manufacturing bays were different. They had energy shields, they moved in coordinated attack patterns, and they were not just defending anymore. They were starting to target the Dominion ships. "How are they adapting so quickly?" the weapons officer demanded. The tactical officer pulled up analysis data. "The human vessel is processing our weapons fire in real time. It is analyzing frequency patterns, attack vectors, munition types. Then it is manufacturing countermeasures. Commander, this is not a warship. This is a learning machine." One of the Dominion vessels reported critical damage. A swarm of human drones had overwhelmed its point defenses and torn into its engine section. The ship began to drift, losing power. Captain Chen's face appeared on the display again, uninvited. She looked slightly disheveled now, probably from combat stress, but she was smiling. "Fleet Commander Jathir, I tried to warn you. The Defiant Mercy was not built to attack. It was built to survive. There is a difference. Please recall your ships before this gets worse." Jathir felt anger burning in his chest. "Worse? You think you can threaten the Dominion? I have 50 ships attacking you and 9,950 more waiting. You cannot win." "Winning was never the goal, Commander," Captain Chen replied. "Teaching was. Every weapon you fire at us, we learn from. Every tactic you use, we adapt to. The question you should be asking yourself is this: how much are you willing to teach us?" The communication cut off. Jathir stared at the tactical display where 3 more Dominion ships were now reporting damage. The human drones were multiplying faster than his ships could destroy them. And worse, they were using debris from destroyed Dominion vessels as raw material. He could see it on the sensors. Pieces of his own ships were being collected by scavenger drones and dragged back to the Defiant Mercy. "Commander," the tactical officer said quietly, "the humans are recycling our ships. They are turning our weapons into their weapons." Jathir realized he had made a terrible mistake. He was not fighting a warship. He was fighting a factory that turned attacks into raw materials for producing defenders. Jathir made a decision that many of his officers would later question. Instead of pulling back Strike Group 7, he committed more ships. Pride demanded it. Logic demanded it. If one colony ship could hold off 50 warships, what would happen to the Dominion's reputation across the galaxy? "Deploy Strike Groups 1 through 15, he ordered. That is 750 ships total. Surround the human vessel and destroy it. Use overwhelming force. I want that ship reduced to atoms. His officers scrambled to relay the orders. Across the vast armada, 700 more warships broke formation and accelerated toward the defiant Mercy. Jathir watched them go, feeling his confidence return. 750 ships. No single vessel, no matter how advanced, could stand against that many. The tactical display showed the Dominion forces forming a complete sphere around the human ship. They attacked from every angle simultaneously, thousands of weapons fired as one. It was the kind of coordinated assault that had broken the defenses of fortified planets. The defiant Mercy responded by opening more sections of its hull. Entire segments that had appeared to be solid metal folded back, revealing layer after layer of manufacturing facilities. The ship was not hollow, but it was far more modular than any vessel Jathir had ever seen. Each section could be reconfigured, rebuilt, or replaced as needed. Drones poured out in waves that darkened the sensors. But these were not the simple defensive drones from before. The human ship had learned from the previous engagement. These new drones had reinforced armor copied from destroyed Dominion ships. They had shield generators that matched Dominion frequencies. They even had weapons that looked suspiciously like modified versions of Dominion energy cannons. How long has the engagement been active? Jathir demanded. 42 minutes since Strike Group 7 first opened fire, Commander. 42 minutes. In less than an hour, the humans had gone from basic defensive drones to units that could match Dominion military technology. Jathir felt a cold sensation in his primary heart. This was not normal adaptation. This was something else entirely. The weapons officer reported more bad news. Commander, we have lost 18 ships destroyed, another 34 with critical damage. The human vessel appears to be targeting engines and weapon systems specifically. They are disabling our ships, not destroying them. Why would they do that? The tactical officer answered, her voice tight with stress. Because disabled ships provide more salvage, Commander. Look at the display. Those scavenger drones are stripping our damaged vessels. They are taking power cores, shield generators, weapon systems. Everything useful is being transported back to the defiant Mercy. Jathir watched in growing horror as the human vessel fed on his fleet like a predator. But it was worse than that. A predator killed and consumed. This ship was learning, adapting, and improving itself using the corpses of its enemies. Captain Chen appeared on the communication channel again. She was broadcasting to the entire Dominion fleet now, not just the flagship. Every ship could hear her words. Fleet Commander, I need you to understand something, she said. Her voice was calm but carried an edge of urgency. The defiant Mercy was not designed for this. We built her to survive alone in deep space for thousands of years. We built her to take asteroids and turn them into habitats. We built her to recycle, adapt, and rebuild from whatever materials were available. We built her because humanity learned a long time ago that putting all your people on one planet was dangerous. She paused, looking directly at the camera. You brought warriors. We brought engineers. You brought your best weapons. We brought our best workshop. Every shot you fire teaches us. Every ship you damage gives us resources. You are not fighting a military. You are fighting an entire civilization's worth of survival instinct compressed into one vessel. The communication cut off, but her message had been heard. Jathir could see it in his officers' faces. Doubt, fear. The realization that they were not in a battle they understood. The tactical officer highlighted something new on the display. Commander, the human vessel is launching smaller craft. They appear to be heading for the nearby asteroid field. Intercept them, Jathir ordered. Dominion fighters pursued the human craft, but they were fast and evasive. 3 reached the asteroids before they could be stopped. They landed on the larger rocks and immediately began unpacking. Within minutes, the sensors showed construction activity. They are building mining operations, the tactical officer reported. No, not just mining. They are constructing additional manufacturing facilities on the asteroids themselves. Commander, they are expanding their production capacity. Jathir felt the situation slipping out of control. He was used to battles that had clear phases: engagement, climax, resolution. But this was not following any pattern he recognized. The longer the fight continued, the stronger the humans became. More reports came in. Dominion ships were experiencing system failures. Their computers were being infiltrated by something. Nanoscale machines, Smaller than dust particles had been released by the human drones. They were getting into ventilation systems, into computer cores, into weapon targeting arrays. They did not destroy these systems. They disrupted them, disabled them, made them useless. The humans are using nanotechnology as a weapon, the tactical officer said. She sounded exhausted. We cannot stop something we cannot see. Jathir made another decision. All ships pull back to minimum safe distance. Prepare for long-range bombardment. We will destroy that vessel from a distance it cannot adapt to. The Dominion fleet began to retreat, establishing a new perimeter 50,000 kilometers out. At this range, they could use their longest-range weapons while staying beyond the effective radius of the human drones. Captain Chen's face appeared again. This time she was not alone. Behind her, Jathir could see the interior of the Defiant Mercy. It was not a military vessel. He saw families, children, elderly humans in simple clothing. Thousands of people visible in the background, living their lives even as battle raged outside. You think distance will save you, Chen said, but you are still teaching us. Every weapon you use, we study. Every tactic you try, we record. And we are sending all of this data back to Earth right now. Real-time updates. Every defensive solution we develop here. Every adaptation we make. All of it is being shared with our homeworld and our colonies. She leaned forward. And for the first time, Jathir saw anger in her expression. You came here expecting to fight a young species that did not know war. But humanity has always known war. We fought each other for thousands of years before we ever reached space. We learned every lesson about conflict the hard way. And the most important lesson we learned was this. The best weapon is not the one that destroys your enemy. It is the one that makes your enemy never want to fight you again. The display showed something new. The Defiant Mercy had completed repairs on itself. The damaged sections of hull were already replaced. More than that, the ship had grown. New modules had been added, constructed from salvaged Dominion materials. It was larger now than when the battle started. I'm giving you one more chance, Fleet Commander, Captain Chen said. Withdraw your forces. Open diplomatic channels. We can end this without more death. Or you can continue and we will continue to learn from you. The choice is yours, but understand this. We have 60 more ships like the Defiant Mercy under construction. Each one is watching this battle. Each one is learning what you are teaching us today. How many battles can you afford to fight? Jathir knew she was bluffing about the 60 ships. Intelligence said humans had maybe 3 of these generation arcs completed. But the tactical situation was undeniable. He had committed 800 ships and lost over 50. The human vessel had grown stronger, and every piece of data the humans gathered made their entire species more dangerous. The Dominion fleet held position at 50,000 kilometers. Jathir called an emergency council with his senior officers and the representatives from each of the 12 species that made up the alliance. The meeting room aboard the Eternal Dominance was crowded with different life forms, all of them arguing. We must continue, insisted the Vrothian ambassador, his biomechanical body clicking with agitation. If we retreat now, every minor species in the galaxy will think they can defy us. We have already lost too much, countered the crystalline representative, her voice chiming like bells. 53 ships destroyed, 90 more damaged beyond quick repair. And for what? We have not even scratched that human vessel. Jathir let them argue. He was studying the tactical reports his officers had compiled. The numbers painted a disturbing picture. The Defiant Mercy had started the engagement with approximately 2,000 defensive drones. It now had over 15,000 combat-capable units. It had started with basic point defense systems. It now had energy shields that could deflect Dominion weapons, weapons that could punch through Dominion armor, and electronic warfare capabilities that were shutting down ships without firing a shot. The science officer, a small reptilian creature with keen eyes, had compiled the most troubling report. Jathir read it while the ambassadors continued their debate. The human vessel operates on principles we have not encountered before, the report stated. It does not use standard military doctrine. Instead, it treats combat as a resource gathering and learning opportunity. Every attack we make provides 3 things: raw materials from damaged ships, tactical data about our capabilities, and field testing for human countermeasures. The vessel's manufacturing capacity is limited only by available energy and raw materials. Since it has nearly unlimited energy from its power cores, and we keep providing raw materials in the form of our own ships, its growth potential is exponential. The report concluded with a sentence that Jathir kept rereading. Recommendation: do not engage further. Every moment of combat makes the enemy stronger. Fleet Commander, your opinion, the Vrothian ambassador demanded. Should we commit the full fleet? Jathir looked up from the report. What you are asking is whether we should send all 10,000 ships against one human vessel. Is that correct? Yes, overwhelming force. Nothing can stand against the full might of the Dominion. And if we lose? Jathir asked quietly. The room fell silent. The idea of losing seemed impossible to most of them. They had the numbers, the technology, the experience, but Jathir had been fighting wars for 40 years. He knew that sometimes the side with fewer ships won because they had something else. Better position, better information, or in this case, better adaptation. A junior tactical analyst requested permission to speak. Jathir recognized her as one of the brightest minds in the fleet, a young officer from a species known for mathematical genius. He nodded for her to proceed. Honorable Ambassadors, Fleet Commander, I have run simulations, she said nervously. If we commit the full fleet, we will likely destroy the human vessel. My models give us 70% probability of success, but the cost will be between 3,000 and 4,000 ships, and that assumes the humans do not have any additional surprises. 3,000 ships is acceptable, the Vrothian ambassador said. We have 10,000. We can afford the loss. Respectfully, Ambassador, you are not considering the strategic picture, the analyst continued. Her voice grew stronger despite her obvious fear. If we destroy the Defiant Mercy, we win one battle. But the humans will have detailed recordings of everything we did. Every weapon we used, every tactic we employed, every ship design we brought. They are broadcasting it all back to Earth in real time. Their entire species will spend the next year adapting to everything they learned today. She brought up a display showing projections. The humans currently have a small fleet of perhaps 300 ships spread across their colonies. Those ships are inferior to ours, but if we teach them how to counter our weapons, how to exploit our tactical patterns, how to reverse engineer our technology, in 1 year, maybe 2, they will have adapted. Any future conflict will be against an enemy that has already solved us. Jathir saw understanding dawn on some faces. Others still looked skeptical. The Vrothian ambassador waved a mechanical limb dismissively. Then we destroy them now completely. Not just this ship, but all of humanity. We have the forces. We can end them before they become a threat. That is genocide, the crystalline representative said sharply. The Galactic Council would never permit it. We would lose all legitimacy. Then what do you suggest? The Vrothian demanded. The analyst spoke up again. I suggest we cannot afford to teach them war. Every battle we fight with humanity makes them better at fighting us. The only winning move is not to play. The room erupted in argument again. Jathir listened to it all, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about Captain Chen's words, about the families he had seen aboard the Defiant Mercy, about the fact that humans built vessels capable of sustaining entire populations in deep space, not because they were warlike, but because they were careful. He remembered something from his research on humanity. They had a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. The Defiant Mercy was their preparation for the worst. It was not a weapon. It was a lifeboat designed to save their species if everything else failed, and they had turned it into an unkillable opponent simply by being true to its purpose. Survive, adapt, overcome. Jathir made his decision. The fleet will withdraw. Every voice in the room stopped. They all stared at him. Fleet Commander, you cannot be serious, the Vrothian ambassador protested. I am completely serious, Jathir replied. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. We came here to force humanity's submission. We believed they were weak because they were young. We were wrong. They are not weak. They are adaptable. And there is a vast difference between those two things. He stood, his full height imposing even among the varied species present. I have fought in 17 campaigns. I have conquered stubborn enemies and destroyed foolish ones. But I have never fought an enemy that became stronger the more we attacked them. The analyst is correct. Every moment we continue this engagement, we teach the humans how to defeat us. If we win this battle but lose the knowledge advantage, we have gained nothing and lost everything. This is cowardice, the Vrothian ambassador spat. No, Jathir said coldly. This is strategy. Cowardice would be continuing a battle we do not need to fight simply because our pride demands it. I am withdrawing the fleet. The ambassadors may file complaints with the Dominion Council if they wish, but I will not sacrifice more ships and more lives to teach an enemy how to destroy us. He turned to his communication officer. Open a channel to Captain Chen. The human woman appeared on the display. She looked tired but alert. Behind her, the interior of the Defiant Mercy showed signs of battle stress, but the ship was intact and its people were safe. Captain Chen, this is Fleet Commander Jathir. I am ordering the Dominion fleet to withdraw from human space. We will return to the neutral zone and await diplomatic contact. Captain Chen's expression did not change, but Jathir saw relief in her eyes. That is a wise decision, Fleet Commander. Humanity is prepared to open formal negotiations for a peace treaty. I have one question before we withdraw, Jathir said. You claim to have 60 more ships like the Defiant Mercy. How many do you actually have? Captain Chen smiled slightly. Does it matter, Fleet Commander? You now know what even one can do. Would you want to face 3 or 5? She was right, Jathir realized. The exact number did not matter. What mattered was that humanity had proven they could turn civilian vessels into unconquerable fortresses simply by being creative. Any future war with them would be a nightmare of adaptation and attrition. No, Captain, I would not, Jathir admitted. The Dominion fleet will withdraw within the hour. I suggest we both send representatives to the neutral station for negotiations. Agreed, Fleet Commander. And Commander? Thank you for choosing wisdom over pride. The communication ended. Jathir issued orders for the full fleet to pull back. As 10,000 ships began their retreat, he looked at the image of the Defiant Mercy one last time. It hung in space, battered but unbroken, surrounded by a cloud of drones that looked almost like a protective swarm. 6 months passed before Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Defiant Mercy again. The ship had been fully repaired, upgraded even, using techniques learned during the battle. The damage from Dominion weapons had been erased. The new sections built from salvaged alien materials had been integrated seamlessly into the original design. She watched through the viewport as another ship approached. Not a warship this time, a diplomatic vessel, elegant and unarmed, bearing the symbols of the Galactic Council. They had come to make things official. Captain, the delegation is requesting permission to dock, her first officer reported. Grant permission, and make sure the welcoming committee looks sharp. This is important. Sarah walked through the corridors of the Defiant Mercy, passing families going about their daily lives. Children played in the parks that occupied the spinning ring sections, laughing as they chased each other in the artificial gravity. Farmers tended crops in the agricultural levels. Engineers worked in the manufacturing bays that had saved them all during the battle. This was what she had been protecting. Not territory, not resources, but people and their right to live in peace. The delegation arrived in the main reception hall. Sarah recognized some of them from the intelligence briefings. Ambassador Terrell of the Galactic Council, a wise old being from a species that had been spacefaring for 10,000 years. And surprisingly, Fleet Commander Jathir, wearing diplomatic robes instead of his military uniform. Captain Chen, Ambassador Terrell said, his translator converting his complex language into standard English. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally invite humanity to join us as full members with all rights and privileges. Sarah nodded respectfully. Humanity accepts with gratitude. We look forward to peaceful cooperation with all galactic civilizations. The formal words were necessary, but Sarah was more interested in Jathir. The Dominion commander had requested a private meeting after the ceremony. She agreed, curious about what he wanted to say. They met in one of the observation rooms, just the two of them and their translators. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Former enemies now forced to become something else. I owe you an apology, Captain, Jathir said finally. I underestimated your species. I saw your youth and mistook it for weakness. Many have made that mistake, Sarah replied. We are used to it. Being new to the galaxy means everyone assumes we do not know what we are doing. What you did during that battle, Jathir continued, was unlike anything I have seen in 40 years of military service. You did not fight to win. You fought to teach us not to fight. Sarah smiled slightly. We learned a long time ago that the best victories are the ones where nobody has to die. Our history is full of terrible wars. We almost destroyed ourselves several times. We learned from that. We learned that survival does not come from being the strongest. It comes from being the most adaptable. The Defiant Mercy, Jathir said. Why that name? Because that is what humanity decided we wanted to be, Sarah explained. Defiant when we must be, merciful when we can be. We built the generation arcs not as weapons but as insurance. If Earth was ever destroyed, if our colonies were ever wiped out, these ships would preserve our species. Each one carries the knowledge, culture, and genetic diversity to restart human civilization from scratch. Jathir's eyes showed something that might have been respect. And when we threatened you, you did not send your military fleet. You sent a lifeboat. We sent the vessel most likely to survive, Sarah corrected. And yes, we knew what it could do. We knew that a ship designed to survive anything could probably defend itself against most things, but we did not know it would work as well as it did. You were gambling, Jathir said. We were adapting, Sarah countered. When you sent 10,000 ships to threaten 300, we had two choices. Send our fleet to be destroyed or send something you were not prepared for. We chose option 2. Jathir made a sound that the translator interpreted as a laugh. You know the worst part, Captain? My analysts tell me that if we had fought differently, if we had used different tactics, we might have won. Maybe, Sarah agreed, but you would have paid a terrible price. And the next time we met, we would have known all your tricks. That was the real message of the battle, Commander. You can probably beat us today, but every time you fight us, we learn. Every time we learn, we improve. Eventually, the cost becomes too high. There was a long pause. Then Jathir asked the question Sarah had been expecting. How many generation arcs do you actually have, Captain? You said 60. I did not believe you then, but I need to know now. Sarah considered her answer carefully. We have 3 completed. 2 more under construction. Plans for 20 more approved and funded. Whether we build all 20 depends on whether we need them. 3, Jathir repeated. We retreated from 3 ships. You retreated from what 3 ships represented, Sarah said. You retreated from the idea of fighting an enemy that turns every attack into a lesson. You made the smart choice, Commander. That is why I agreed to meet with you. You chose wisdom over pride. That is rare among military leaders. I lost friends in that battle, Jathir said quietly. Officers who served under me for years. They died because I underestimated you. I know, and I am sorry for that, Sarah said genuinely. We did not want those deaths. We disabled ships when we could. We offered you chances to withdraw, but you pressed the attack. We did, Jathir acknowledged, and we learned from it. The Dominion Council has officially banned any military action against humanity. More than that, they have requested an alliance. We want to trade, to learn from each other, to cooperate. Why? Sarah asked. Why would you want to ally with a species that defeated you? Because you did not just defeat us, Captain. You taught us something valuable. You showed us that the future does not belong to the strongest species or the oldest or the most aggressive. It belongs to the ones who can adapt to whatever comes. That is a lesson worth learning. Sarah extended her hand, a human gesture she knew the translator would explain. Then we have an agreement, Commander. Humanity and the Dominion, allies instead of enemies. Jathir reached out and clasped her hand with his own, careful not to squeeze too hard with his greater strength. Allies. Though I suspect my people will spend years studying your engineering techniques. And we will study yours, Sarah said with a smile. That is how this is supposed to work. We learn from each other instead of destroying each other. After Jathir left, Sarah returned to the observation deck. Earth was visible in the distance, a blue marble floating in the black. Home. She thought about the battle, about the risks they had taken, about the lives lost on both sides. It had been a gamble, but it had worked. The Defiant Mercy had been built as a lifeboat, but it had become something else. A symbol. Proof that humanity could not be easily threatened or destroyed. Proof that human ingenuity and adaptability were just as powerful as conventional weapons. Her first officer joined her at the viewport. Captain, we are receiving messages from the other generation arcs. They want to know if they should continue with defensive upgrades. Sarah considered the question. The other arcs, Eternal Hope and Unbreakable Spirit, had been watching the battle. They had learned everything the Defiant Mercy had learned. They were ready to defend themselves if needed. Tell them yes, Sarah decided. Continue the upgrades, but also remind them what these ships were built for. They are not warships. They are promises. Promises that humanity will survive, that we will adapt, that we will never give up. Let us make sure we keep that promise. She looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy that humanity was now part of. There would be challenges ahead. Other species might test them. Other conflicts might arise. But humanity had proven something important. They could not be easily defeated because they refused to fight the way others expected. In the manufacturing bays below, engineers were already working on the next generation of technology. Human and alien specialists working together, sharing knowledge, building a better future. That was the real victory, Sarah thought. Not the battle they had won, but the peace they had earned. The defiant Mercy remained in orbit, slowly rotating, its rings spinning in their eternal dance. Inside, 300,000 people lived their lives safe and secure. They were farmers and teachers, engineers and artists, parents and children. They were humanity's insurance policy against disaster. And now, thanks to one desperate gamble, they were also humanity's proof that survival was not about having the biggest weapons. It was about having the best engineers, the most creative thinkers, the people who could look at a problem and find solutions others never considered. That was humanity's real strength. Not their military, but their adaptability. Sarah smiled as she watched Earth slowly turn below. They had come to the galaxy as the youngest species, the newcomers, the ones everyone underestimated. They had been threatened by an empire of 10,000 ships, and they had answered with one vessel, one crew, and one simple message: humanity does not break easily. The fleet had expected a battle. Humanity had given them a lesson instead, and that, Sarah thought, was the most human thing possible. When faced with overwhelming odds, they had not surrendered and they had not attacked. They had adapted. They had survived, and they had made sure everyone knew that any future enemy would face not just weapons, but an entire species that turned every challenge into an opportunity to become stronger. That was humanity. That was the message of the defiant Mercy. And that was why the galaxy would learn to respect them, not because they were the strongest, but because they were the most impossible to destroy.